You have probably seen the clip. Almost everyone has by now. A British royal guard, standing stiff in his red tunic, suddenly swings his arm and a man drops to the ground in front of the gates. 3 seconds, maybe 4. Then it cuts. The whole internet decided in those few seconds that they knew exactly what happened. But I was there. I stood maybe 12 feet from that man when he fell. And I can tell you something that nobody scrolling past it on their phone will ever know. That punch was never real. None of it was. It was bought and sold before any of us even arrived that morning, planned out like a little film. And the saddest part is that the truth was far better than the lie. The truth just didn't make a good clip. Let me start from the beginning, from the cold. It was a gray morning in early autumn. The kind of London gray that doesn't feel like weather so much as a mood the whole city wakes up in. I remember the air had that whetstone smell. The smell the pavement gives off after a night of light rain that never properly committed to being rain. I'd come down to the square just past 7, before the big crowds, because that's my habit. I sell hand-drawn prints near the railings. Little pen sketches of the palace, the gates, the guards, the pigeons. Tourists like them more than photographs, I've found. A photograph is just proof you were there. A drawing feels like somebody chose to remember it. I've been setting up in that same spot for years, long enough that I don't really look at the palace anymore. I look at the people who come to look at the palace. After a while, you stop seeing the building and you start seeing the faces, and the faces tell you more. That morning the crowd was thin. A handful of early tourists with takeaway coffees, breath steaming, cameras already out. A school group somewhere off to my left, kids in matching yellow caps, a teacher counting heads with her finger like she didn't trust the number. An older couple, German I think, holding hands and not saying much. And the guard. There's always a guard, of course. That's the whole point of the place. He stood in his box at first, then stepped out and began his slow patrol along the worn stone the way they do. Boots crisp, rifle on the shoulder, eyes forward and seeing nothing or seeming to. People think those men are statues. They're not. I've watched them for years and I promise you they see everything. They just won't give you the satisfaction of showing it. I want you to picture him properly because he matters. Tall, but not a giant. Young, under that tall bearskin cap. You could only really see his jaw and his mouth, set in that flat, unbothered line they all learn. His chin strap pressed a little line into the skin. There was a tiny nick on his cheek where he'd cut himself shaving that morning, a thin, dark scab, and I remember thinking that's a strange thing to notice about a man who's about to become the most hated guard in the country by lunchtime. A shaving cut. He'd stood in front of a mirror a few hours earlier, ordinary as anyone, and nicked himself, and now here he was. I started laying out my prints, and that's when I noticed the others. There were 4 of them and they did not move like tourists. That's the thing people never understand. After enough years watching this place, you can spot it instantly. Tourists drift. They stop, they point, they get distracted, they wander off and come back. These 4 had a shape to them, a plan. One of them, a young man with a very white smile and a very expensive jacket, kept positioning the others with little touches on the elbow. Stand here. No, here. He was directing them. I clocked him as the leader straight away. Cal, I later learned his name was. Cal had the kind of confidence that fills up a space before he even speaks. He had a phone, obviously, but it was the second phone that bothered me. He'd given a second phone to a girl in the group and sent her about 30 feet away, off to the side, half hidden behind a bin. She wasn't filming the palace. She was filming the spot on the ground where her friends were standing. An empty patch of stone. Why would anyone film an empty patch of stone? 2 cameras on one spot. From 2 angles, before anything had even happened. I'd been around long enough to feel the small, cold drop in my stomach that means something's been arranged. There was a 5th person too, though it took me a minute to understand he was with them. A heavy-set man, maybe 40, in a gray hoodie, hanging back near the railings as if he wasn't part of the group at all. He kept glancing at Cal, tiny glances. The way an actor glances at a director waiting for a cue. He was sweating a little, even in the cold, and he kept wiping his palms on the front of his jeans. That man was nervous. Tourists are excited. Tourists are tired. They are not nervous. Not like that. I should have said something then. I've gone over it 100 times since. But what do you say? Excuse me, I think you're planning something. You'd sound mad. So I did what I always do. I watched. The guard came back along his patrol line, boots ringing on the stone, and the four moved, smooth as anything. They drifted toward the rope barrier as though they just at that moment decided to get a closer look, and they arranged themselves so the man in the gray hoodie ended up closest to the guard's path. Cal lifted his phone. The girl by the bin lifted hers, and the man in the hoodie took a breath I could see from where I stood. A big breath, the breath you take before you jump into cold water. The crowd had grown a little by then. More coffees, more cameras. The school group had drifted closer. A small girl, maybe 6, had wandered a few feet ahead of her mother to get a better look at the soldier. Bright purple coat, little pink shoes that lit up when she stepped. She was utterly delighted by the guard, pointing at his big furry hat and giggling. Her mother, a tired-looking woman with a baby strapped to her chest, called her name softly and reached for her hand. But the girl was in that pocket of pure 6-year-old wonder where mums don't really exist. I mention her now because you need to know she was there. The internet never knew she was there, but I did, and so I'm certain did the guard. Here is the part where everyone thinks they know what happened. The man in the gray hoodie stepped forward right up to the line where tourists are not supposed to step, and he started shouting. Really shouting. Something about the guard being a coward, a puppet, a toy soldier. Filth in there too. He waved his arms. He leaned in close, far closer than anyone sensible would, and he jabbed a finger toward the guard's face. The guard did not react. Of course he didn't. They are trained to be a wall. The man got louder, uglier, performing now, and I understood completely. This was the setup. They wanted the guard to crack. They wanted a clip of a royal guard losing his temper. That was the whole product. That was what Cal was going to sell. And the guard gave them nothing. He kept walking his line. The man followed alongside him, screaming, and the guard's face stayed flat and far away, like the man wasn't even weather. I felt a little flush of pride watching it, honestly. Whatever they wanted, they weren't getting it. The discipline of the thing. You'd have to have lived your whole life never being provoked to understand how hard it is to be provoked and feel nothing show on your face. But Cal was clever, crueler than I gave him credit for. When the guard wouldn't crack, he switched plans right there in real time. He gave a tiny nod, and the man in the hoodie did the thing they'd actually come to do all along. He grabbed at the guard's rifle. Now you have to understand what that means. That weapon is real. Everything about that ceremony looks like theater to a tourist, the costumes and the marching, but the rifle on that man's shoulder is not a prop. And these soldiers are required to respond if someone interferes with them or their weapon. There are procedures. They are allowed to challenge. They are allowed to act. The hoodie man's hand closed on the barrel and yanked. What happened next happened in about a second and a half, and I'm going to slow it down for you, because the internet never did. The guard turned, fast, faster than anything in that slow ceremonial world had any right to be. His whole body pivoted and his free arm came up in a cross, and he drove the heel of his hand and his forearm into the man's chest and shoulder to break the grip and push him back off the weapon. It was not a punch. I was 12 feet away. It was a shove. A hard, trained, controlled shove, exactly the kind they are taught, aimed at the body, designed to create distance and nothing more. But the man in the gray hoodie, and this is the bit that makes me angry even now, the man threw himself backward. He'd been waiting for it. The second the guard's arm came up, he flung his own head back and snapped his neck sideways and went down like he'd been hit by a bus. Sold it completely. Hit the stone, rolled, clutched his face, the whole performance. And from 2 angles, 2 phones were recording. One wide, one tight on his face. Cut those 3 seconds out of everything around them, and you have a royal guard punching a man in the head outside Buckingham Palace. That's the clip. That's the famous clip. 30 million views and climbing. And every single one of those views is a lie that I watched being manufactured with my own eyes. For a moment after the man went down, The whole square seemed to hold its breath. That's a real thing, by the way. People say it, but it actually happens. There's a kind of silence that drops on a crowd when something shocking occurs, half a second where everyone's brain is still catching up to their eyes. The pigeons kept going. The traffic kept going somewhere behind us. But the people went quiet, all of them at once, that German couple, the school kids, the woman with the baby. Quiet. And the guard stood there. He'd already snapped back to attention. Rifle squared, eyes forward, as if nothing had happened at all. That's what they're trained to do, deal with the threat, then return to form. But I was close enough to see his chest going up and down a little quicker than before, and I saw his jaw, that flat line of his mouth, tighten just slightly at the corner. He knew. He understood in that instant exactly what had been done to him. You could see the understanding arrive on his face like a cloud crossing it. He'd been baited, and he'd done the correct thing, the trained thing, the only thing, and it had been turned into a weapon against him before the man even hit the ground. Cal was already moving. This is the part that tells you everything about him. He didn't go to his friend on the floor, he looked at his phone, he checked the shot, I saw him do it. A man is lying on the ground, supposedly knocked out by a soldier, and the first thing Cal does is glance down at his screen to make sure he got it. Then he started shouting loud, performing for the crowd now. He hit him. Did you see that? He just punched him. Are you filming this? Everyone filmed this. And people did. That's the awful magic of it. Cal's panic gave everyone permission. Suddenly 30 phones came up. 30 more angles, all of them starting after the fall, all of them showing a crowd in uproar and a man on the ground and a guard standing over it, all looking to a stranger, cold and guilty. The story wrote itself. Cal didn't even have to push it. He just lit the match and the crowd built the fire. The man in the gray hoodie stayed down a beat too long, milking it, then let his friends help him up, holding his face, staggering theatrically. One of the girls was crying, actually crying. I think she'd half convinced herself it was real, or maybe she was just that good. They started backing away toward the road, all 4 of them around their wounded friend, Cal still filming, still narrating to his phone. We're getting him out of here, this is insane. This is actually insane. And here is where the morning split into 2 stories. There was the story the cameras caught, the one that went around the world. And there was the other one. The one that happened about 10 feet to the right, that nobody filmed because it wasn't loud and it wasn't violent and it didn't fit what everyone had already decided was true. The little girl in the purple coat. When the man went down and the crowd surged and gasped, the whole press of people shifted forward all at once to see. You know how crowds do. They become one big stupid animal, and that surge knocked the little girl off her feet. Her mother, with the baby strapped to her chest, couldn't get to her fast enough through the wall of legs and coats and raised arms. The girl went down right at the rope barrier, right in the gap, and a grown man stumbling backward. One of Cal's lot, actually, retreating from the scene, nearly trod straight on her. She was on the cold stone, those little pink shoes still flashing their lights, and she started to scream. Not the giggle from before. A real, frightened, hurt scream, the kind that goes straight through you. And the guard broke form. I want you to understand how rare what I saw next is, because most people will never see it once in their lives. These men do not break. That's the whole legend of them. People stand in front of them for hours trying to make them flinch, and they don't flinch. A man had just grabbed his rifle and faked an assault, and the guard had stayed iron. But the sound of that child screaming on the stone behind him, he turned. Fully, he left his post. He took 3 quick strides, and he reached down with his white-gloved hand, and he got between the girl and the stumbling crowd, putting his own boot and his own body in the gap so nobody could step on her. He didn't pick her up. I think they're not really meant to, and besides, you don't just grab a frightened child you don't know. But he made a wall of himself. He crouched, that tall, ridiculous, beautiful hat tipping forward, and he said something to her. I was close enough to almost hear it, but not quite. Something low, something kind. And he held his gloved hand out, flat, palm up, the way you'd offer your hand to a nervous animal. Steady, patient. The girl stopped screaming. She stared at the hat, then at the hand. And her mother got there at last, scooped her up, and the guard stood and stepped back, and the mother said thank you, over and over, with tears running down her face. And the guard gave one tiny nod and walked back to his line and squared up and became a statue again as if none of it had happened. Nobody filmed that. Think about that for a second. 30 phones in that square, and every single one of them was pointed at a man pretending to be hurt, and not one of them caught a soldier protecting a child who was actually hurt. The cameras were all looking in the direction of the lie. The truth happened in the quiet part of the frame, and the quiet part of the frame never goes viral. The mother knew, I knew, a handful of people right at the front who happened to be facing the right way knew, and that was all. 6, 7 people out of a crowd of hundreds and an internet of millions. I stood there with my prints fluttering on the railing, and I felt something I find hard to describe even now. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was a sort of grief, because I already understood what was about to happen. I'd watched it being built. I knew the clip was already uploading, already racing out into the world, and I knew that by the time most people saw it, the guard would already be the villain. There would be no room left for the truth. The truth would arrive too late, the way it always does, knocking politely on a door the lie had already kicked down. The clip went up that same afternoon. By evening, it was everywhere. I didn't have to go looking for it. My sister sent it to me, of all people, with a message that just said, "This is disgusting. Is this near where you work?" And there it was on my own phone. 3 seconds, the arm coming across. The man dropping, cut. Set to dramatic music someone had added. A caption in big white letters, "Royal Guard attacks innocent tourist." The comments were a flood. People who'd never stood in that square in their lives, furious, certain, demanding the guard be named, sacked, arrested. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. The number ticking up while I watched, like a meter on a machine that runs on people being angry. I felt sick. I'd seen the whole thing from 12 feet away, and the version on my phone wasn't a shortened truth. It was a built lie, and it was beating the truth so badly it wasn't even a contest. I'll be honest with you. For a day or two I did nothing. What could I do? I'm a man who sells drawings by some railings, who listens to me. Cal had 30 million people on his side and a video that proved it. I had my memory and a feeling in my stomach. I told myself it would blow over. Things do. But it didn't sit right. It kept me up. That shaving cut on his cheek. The way he'd crouched down for the little girl and held his palm out flat. The mother saying thank you with tears on her face into a crowd that had already turned its back. The truth happening in the quiet part of the frame. So I started paying attention to Cal. Turns out he wasn't hard to find. Men like that want to be found. He had a channel, a big one, full of so-called pranks, and in nearly every one there was that same shape I'd seen in the square, the planning, the second camera, the friend who falls down too well. I went back through them, and once you know how to look, it's obvious. The same girl who cried. The same heavyset man in different jackets, falling over, getting caught. Always conveniently filmed from 2 angles. He'd built a whole business out of manufacturing moments and selling them as real. The guard was just his biggest catch yet. And then I noticed something that changed everything. In Cal's own video, the long one on his channel, not the short clip going around he'd left in a few extra seconds out of vanity. He wanted his viewers to see him bravely filming. And in those extra seconds, right at the edge of his own frame, blurry but there, you could see the man in the gray hoodie reaching out and grabbing the rifle barrel. Cal had filmed the proof of his own lie and posted it himself, because he was too arrogant to think anyone would ever look closely. I'm not a clever man with computers, but my niece is. I sat her down and I showed her, frame by frame, and her face changed as she watched. The grab. The shove that was clearly a shove and not a punch. The man throwing himself backward a full beat before any contact even reached his head. And then in the wide shot, off to the side, small but unmistakable, a flash of a purple coat going down, and a tall figure breaking from his line to crouch over it. It was all there, in Cal's own footage. He'd published the lie and the truth in the same video and only ever shown the world the 3 seconds that served him. My niece cut it together, slowed it down, put the grab and the fall and the rescue side by side with simple white text, no music, no shouting. Just watch the hand, watch the timing, watch the corner of the frame, and then we put it out quietly with no expectation at all. I won't pretend it instantly fixed everything. It didn't. Lies travel first class and the truth walks. For a while our little video just sat there with a few hundred views while the original kept climbing. But truth has one advantage that lies don't. It holds up when you look at it twice. People started looking twice. A few bigger accounts picked it up, then a few more. Someone found another of Cal's videos with the same falling man. Then someone recognized the tourist as a paid actor who'd appeared in 3 of them. And the thing that had been built so carefully started to come apart, not with a bang, but the way these things really fall apart, one careful look at a time. The story flipped, not as fast as it had risen, never as fast, but it flipped. Royal Guard attacks tourist quietly became staged and then pranker exposed. Cal took the videos down, which of course only made it worse because the internet treats a deleted thing as a confession. The brands that paid him walked away. The actor stopped pretending he'd been hurt. The whole thing he'd built on selling fake moments collapsed because, in the end, he'd faked one moment too many in front of one person who happened to know how to look. But I'll tell you the part that mattered most to me. It wasn't seeing Cal exposed. That felt less like a victory and more like clearing up a mess. The part that mattered was the mother. She found our video. She found it and she wrote underneath it, and she told the world what I already knew. That her daughter had been knocked down in the crush, that she couldn't reach her, that a guard, the same guard everyone was calling a thug, had left his post, which I gather they're really not supposed to do, and made a wall of himself between her child and 100 careless feet, and crouched down in that great heavy uniform and spoken so gently that a terrified 6-year-old stopped crying. She said she'd never know his name. They don't get names in those moments. They're just the uniform. But she said her daughter still talks about the kind soldier with the big hat, and that she will make sure her daughter always remembers the truth of that day, even if the rest of the world only ever saw the lie. The guard himself never said a word. Of course he didn't. He's not allowed to, and even if he were, I don't think he would. I went back to my spot by the railings a week later and there he was, or one like him, you can't always tell under the hat. Same flat line of a mouth. Same eyes forward, seeing everything, showing nothing. People walked past him filming, the way they do, never knowing. Some of them had probably shared the clip. Some of them had probably called for a man like him to be sacked. And he just stood there in the cold and did his job and gave them nothing. Because giving people nothing is the whole proud point of him. I sold a few prints that morning. One to a couple who asked me, half joking, if this was where that guard punched the guy. I said no. I said it was where a guard once protected a little girl while the whole world looked the other way. They didn't really understand. They smiled and paid and wandered off to take their photos. That's all right. Not everything has to go viral to be true. I think about it a lot that morning. How easy it is now to take 3 seconds out of someone's life and use them to bury the rest of who they are. How the loudest version of a story almost always wins, and the loudest version is almost never the truest one. We watch a clip and we feel certain, and our certainty feels like knowledge, but it isn't. It's just the part somebody chose to show us. So the next time you see a clip, a guard, a stranger, anyone, caught in 3 seconds of their worst possible angle, I'd ask you to do just one thing. Remember the little girl in the purple coat. Remember that the camera was pointed the wrong way. Remember that somewhere just outside the frame, in the quiet part nobody filmed, the truth was probably happening all along. Because the man everyone hated that day was, as far as I ever saw, the only truly good person in that square. And nobody filmed it.